When 2020 first started, the year was looking pretty promising for the Nintendo Switch since Animal Crossing New Horizons is about to kick things off with a bang. But as we all know, the year ended up being one of the biggest botches in human history, but assuming the Earth doesn't get hit with some kind of an asteroid or something, I think the Switch is gonna tear all kinds of booty in 2021, and I dare say that it just might be the console's best year yet. How could I make such a bold claim, you ask? Well, sit back in your stepdad's dialysis machine, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the world's third strongest Little League player, CameronAllOneWord, to tell you why the Nintendo Switch is gonna rule in 2021. Alright, so somewhat recently, I made a video about how the Nintendo Switch is absolutely refusing to bring 64 GameCube and Wii games over to the Switch, and despite the fact that I talked about how Mario 3D All-Stars was probably gonna be a thing, I stand by everything I said about how Nintendo really wants to keep games from these consoles away from the Switch for reasons that I talk more about in that very video. But the reason why I think Nintendo caved and made an exception for Mario 3D All-Stars simply comes down to the fact that they're just not gonna have any big new games out in 2020 outside of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which isn't really a first-party game anyway. Some people think that Nintendo's lack of original content's because of that dang PBR virus hindering the software development, which I do believe is the case to some extent, but I think it has more to do with the fact that Switch hardware is going to be relatively hard to find for the foreseeable future, and because of that, it's not going to take much for all the available consoles to sell out during the busiest time of the year, so why rush all the big guns out when nobody's ever even played Pikmin 3 on the Wii U, and when everyone's fiending for the forbidden fruit that is 64 GameCube and Wii games on the Switch, and the fact that 3D All-Stars is only going to be around for 6 months proves that Nintendo really didn't want to put games from these consoles on the Switch at all, but the real question here is why March of 2021? Well, if you ask me, and if you clicked on this video, then you kinda did, then I'd bet that it's because Nintendo knows that that's when they're gonna be able to launch all their heavy hitters, and when I'd assume that Switches are gonna be a lot easier to find in the wild. Not to mention that the competition for Microsoft and Sony won't be as strong during that time either, since some of the hype from the new consoles will have died down a bit by then. So with that being said, I'm expecting March, April, or May of 2021 at the latest to have something big that's gonna sell out the ass in place of Super Mario 3D All-Stars, even though I personally think they should just leave this game out on the market, since I doubt it's gonna hinder any of the other first-party games, but hey, that's just me and like 65 million other people. As far as what games 2021 is going to bring to the table, though, we already know about Monster Hunter Rise, which is going to be coming in March, and could very well be the game that made Nintendo take Mario 3D All-Stars out of the spotlight, along with the Shin Megami Tensei 3 remaster, as well as Super Mario 3D World in February, which might not seem like that big of a deal to some of us, what with it being a Wii U port and all that, but given that there's over 50 million Switch owners who've never played this game, I'd say that it's probably going to raise a lot more hell in 2021 than people think, especially with all the extra content, and not only that, but having 100% of the original game myself, I think a lot of people are going to have quite a bit of fun with this as well. And even beyond the Shin Megami Tensei 3 remaster, there's also the long-awaited brand new Switch-exclusive Shin Megami Tensei 5 that's listed everywhere as a 2021 release, which I tend to believe, and I know that that game might not be everyone's cup of tea, but personally, I'm looking forward to this one quite a bit. There's also some other notable titles already confirmed for 2021, like Rune Factory 5, Ys, and No More Heroes 3, but beyond that, it's all admittedly guesswork unless I'm forgetting some. But with Age of Calamity coming out in 2020, I'd bet like $10 that Breath of the Wild sequel is gonna pop up a year later in 2021 as the Switch's big holiday game, and for Zelda's 35th anniversary. Plus, after a few years of supposedly smooth development, I'd imagine that Bayonetta 3 probably isn't too far off of the horizon either, and while I'd love Metroid Prime 4, I can't pretend that I honestly believe it's coming in 2021, as nice as that'd be. You know, it would be nice to be surprised, I guess. There's also plenty of other franchises that Nintendo's got in the chamber for potential games like Star Fox and F-Zero, which would surely melt the internet, Super Mario RPG, which is a bit of a long shot, but one that fit right in with the other third-party exclusives the Switch is going to offer in 2021. Plus, there's also 2D Metroid, Kirby, Golden Sun, and I'd be shocked if Game Freak didn't toss another set of Pokemon games into the mix. But the point of this video is not necessarily to predict what Nintendo's going to deliver in 2021, even though I totally called a brand new Paper Mario game in 2020 well over a year ago. All I'm saying is that I think Nintendo's going to deliver a lot of big things in 2021, and that people shouldn't panic just because the 2020 holiday season's a little lackluster. Because even though I don't doubt that the PBR virus hindered Nintendo's development to some extent, I really don't think that it halted it altogether given all the games that are coming to Sony and Microsoft's consoles. Even if Nintendo's developers have had to adjust working from home, I'm sure they've all been working really hard to try and get some big guns ready, and I'm sure that they have a lot to show for their work. I just don't think the goal is to release all these games until things go back to normal and people could easily buy Switches whenever they want, since all these older games are going to be more than enough to keep the Switch's momentum going as much as it possibly could have anyway, given the issues with the hardware production and the launch of 2 brand new consoles. And it doesn't really matter that we don't know what Nintendo's got in store for 2021 right now, because as they've shown us countless times with all their recent directs, their new MO seems to be to announce games and then release them like 20 minutes later, which I think is a smarter way to go about it, because it allows them to capitalize on the initial hype from a game's announcement, even though it does probably suck for people who can't afford to buy these games without much notice. But while I'm sure Nintendo's probably going to drop a lot of games in 2021 with short notice, though, I'm pretty sure they're going to give us more than a few weeks heads up for the year's biggest games. But regardless of when they show us their cards, I'm pretty confident that the Switch's 2021 is going to be pretty jam-packed now that Nintendo's had time to hoard some games thanks to all the time that these ports and remasters bought them. So to sum it all up, I basically think that Nintendo probably could have put whatever games out for the 2020 holiday season that they originally planned on if they really needed to, although I'm sure that there were some legitimate delays. And due to the scarcity of Switch hardware, those games are now going to be front-loaded into 2021 instead, and since I don't think their 2020 lineup was really delayed by all that much internally, they should be able to execute the same game plan they initially had for 2021 more or less, which would mean that it's going to be a pretty badass year for Nintendo's little hybrid that could. But anyway, what do you think? Is the Switch going to tear all kinds of ass in the backyard in 2021, or do you think that Nintendo really stocked the holidays up with ports and remasters because they didn't have anything else going on? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and as always, I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody at some point. But let me tell you, if there's two people who I'm sure are gonna tear ass around the backyard in 2021, then it would definitely be today's patrons of the day, Jiz Noof and John Polish Impossible to Say. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes and silly rewards in the mail. Send pictures or videos of you rocking merch if you want to make cameos in my videos, and follow me on Twitch if you ever want to hang out whenever I play video games sometimes. My name's CameronAllOneWord, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.